Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. Today we are um, we're having uh, the fourth series of language inspiration, and we've got some exciting guests. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Dean. Today our guest is Nancy Silberkleit, as co-CEO of Archie Comics. Welcome, Nancy. So, just hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Can you say, yeah, okay,
Yes.
great. So, hello everyone, and great. Um, so, I just wanted to say that language inspiration is about it, the idea is to inspire and promote language learning. In my studio, Linguacom, we work with professionals around the world and help them improve their English. So I just started this project of language inspiration to help mm, all the learners to, to find the inspiration, to find the courage to learn a foreign language. And every time uh, we have great guests. And today our guest is particularly motivational, and that it's not the first time I met Nancy, and I'm very excited. So Nancy has a very interesting story. Today we're going to talk about comic books and how they can help us improve our English, like how they can inspire us learn English, and many other things. So I guess, Nancy, over to you.
Zam, wham, wow to my global audience. Before publishing, CEO of Archie Comics, co CEO, my background was in education. I was a teacher for 25 years in a public school in New Jersey. My stepping out of the classroom and going into the world of comics has provided me the opportunity to pair those careers and build a platform to helping teachers convey information. And I want to say, those were my teaching shoes. I was an art teacher, and I kept those shoes in my classroom and would step into them every day. So teachers conveying information that may be difficult to approach, such as environment, bullying, obesity, gun violence, autism, literacy, and believing in yourselves. So this is a panel I'd like to show you. I was never much of a tree hugger, but as the co-CEO of Archie Comics, I wanted to be in step with what was going on and being relevant. And environment is a difficult issue. So it was when this was a big story, and when this particular panel came across my desk, and I saw that visual of Archie sitting on single-use plastic, it touched me. And internally, I started internalizing, ideas and values for myself. I stopped using single-use plastic as much as I could. So, if I would have maybe a talk, maybe a bottle of water and plastic, but now I always try to have everything in a ceramic or usable cup. So, what an opportunity that I find you. In the past, before COVID times, my many touchdowns into various countries, I meet folks that tell me Archie Comics is how they learned English. I always say, tell me that. Tell me that. And one of the words and topics and conversations that come up abroad is the word jalopy. So, what is a jalopy. And people told me they found that word interesting and just curious. So when they would turn the pages of Archie Comics, they found that it was Archie's car. Let's go back. My assistant, I want to take a second, is Dean Kuchar, and he is always supporting me with these wonderful visuals. And he happens to be in Rhode Island now. So, thank goodness for all social media platforms
Thank you,
and
Dean, for being here.
and Zoom. So, many of our stories always will have, Archie's vehicle, the jalopy. And for anyone out there just hearing that beautiful American sounding word jalopy, it's a car. But it's a car that you can't always count on. It's always breaking down. And it kind of looks like it needs some tender, loving care. So that is, what a jalopy is. So it would always be conversation on how I learned English through Archie Comics. So my travels around the world are to spread literacy, because learning is what I love, and how one is engaged into learning sits high on my shoulders. We are, always teachers, natural teachers are always trying to find ways to engage people into conversation. And thank you, Tanya, for, meeting me in Israel, and then, meeting me again, and getting out my
My
voice to
pleasure.
many other countries on this important topic. But I'd like to point out, we are human first. We're all human first. So whether we are deaf, ADHD, dyslexia, or however our bodies and minds present themselves, we are humans first. We also know that humans can be very judgmental and very critical of ourselves. So that's why I'm here today. Archie Comics is a global company. It seems to touch everyone. It's a brand that I'd like to say is owned by the people. It was the art of conversation, your conversation, that propelled the brand around the world. Archie is now 80 years old, and it's owned by two families, the Goldwaters and the Silberkleits. I'm Nancy Silberkleit. And here is a picture of my late husband and his dear partner, Richard Goldwater. And I always like to say, in good times or bad times, it was those two men that brought Archie Comics into second generation. So maybe whatever difficulties were going on, they made sure it worked. And they made sure it worked for the many people, communities around our globe. That's a lot of people. It was only 15 years ago, Richard Goldwater passed away. And then, shockingly, 7 months later, my husband passed away. There I was sitting in Paramus, New Jersey as a school teacher with 25 years of teaching under my belt. And I was being asked to sell the 50% of Archie stock that was left to our family for me to oversee. And my answer, everyone, was no. But there was a force that would persist. And I would have to have talks with my brain as to why I did not want that Veronica Lodge life. And maybe with Smithers, with a tray of drinks on a yacht. But there was a problem with that. Every time I thought about, selling and having that opulent life like Veronica, there was a problem with that. I don't like to drink, and I get terribly seasick. So I simply would not sell. So, and I'll ask you this, Tanya. Do teachers go into their careers to become wealthy? So I'm a true
Well,
educator,
no. No, 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 no.
right? So,
Dean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nancy, for the interruption. I thought maybe we could enlarge the slide or show it full screen if possible, because to show who Veronica is, because I'm not sure everybody knows. Veronica is a character
and let's
on a
go back
comic.
to that first slide with Veronica on the yacht there.
Yeah,
There she is with her father.
yeah,
And
there
you
she
see,
is.
yeah, it has a nice suit. And, she lives a very, very,
Fancy
you know,
life.
yeah, handsome life, opulent life. So, I would have talks with my brain. But as I say, do teachers go into their careers to become wealthy? So here you had, someone with 25 years of teaching under their belt. So, moving, selling could not move me. So the force came up with another idea. And what did I do? I tumbled out of the classroom into the Archie Comics boardroom with a feeling worse than seasickness. And here is a picture of me becoming the co-CEO at Archie Comics. It was Fortune magazine that did a story on me. They called me the accidental boss because, believe me, this was not in my crystal ball. And there I was, holding on to Betty Cooper for dear life. Because at that time, and I want your listeners to hear this, at that time, I felt business was not for me. At that time, I felt, do you all hear this? I had felt I had no business experience. At that time, I saw the Archie comic bar way over my head. So I
Mhm.
was holding on to Betty Cooper at that moment for dear life. But as I reflect on these long, hard 15 years as a co CEO to Archie Comics, I realize it was the shoes of a school teacher that gave me my personal MBA. Now, not everyone has to have a teaching background, but look at your background, embrace your background. But for myself, teachers have extraordinary expertise. It was my job for 25 years to understand how to get information to an individual's mind in a manner that they could comprehend what was being presented. The same goes for that person in the business seat. It is their responsibility to connect the brand to the people. Teachers and CEOs share a common goal: growth and advancement. It's the teacher's creative communication, presentation skills, and a lot of experience dealing with difficult situations, emotional, practical, and logistical. Teachers go out of their way to understand the complexity of families. Just think about that. A teacher has a group of students, and she just not a good teacher just does not just invest in that student, but they get to know their families. So that is where patience is learned. For a business to be successful, one needs patience, especially when presented with the unexpected situations, especially the odd situations that can escalate and situations that can be encountered in a family business. Very, very tough. So, however, there was something I did not come equipped with, something I did not learn in the classroom, and that was the love of reading. I could read, but the love of reading. Can you believe I never read a comic book? A big serious obstacle. I had never read an Archie comic. And that's a whole nother story. Back in my mind, why Archie comics had never come across, my assortment of reading. So that patience that I talk about, that I learned in a classroom as a teacher, certainly did not exist when the folks that first introduced me to reading at a young age. And here's a picture. A teacher, the librarian, must come equipped with a toolbox to see what is it that will click with the individual to unleash that desire to connect the mind to reading. And this is not a picture of me, but it very well is a very close snapshot of what was going on with me internally when someone tried to connect me to reading. And as I said, there was no one there with patience or understanding. Reading was not only a challenge, but I had sadly looked at the ordeal as my personal shame, and I chose to hide it for decades. It was only when I stepped out of the classroom into Archie Comics boardroom to be the first female executive to ever walk through Archie Comics' door in 80 years. And again, I was to meet challenges that eventually landed me on many stages around the world to share the message on what gets me through my day. Getting through one's day can be very difficult, debilitating, lonely, a deep sense of isolation. So, how can we channel ourselves appropriately for our best interests and for our communities? So, just looking at this picture of the frustration, the sadness, the isolation, that can happen during many different situations. It just doesn't have to be trying to learn something. But, how do we deal with it? So think about it. What is it that gets you through those tough times? For me, it was simply becoming conscious of who I am and creatively putting words together that would rock my soul to help me move forward. And here's my words that Mr. Dean Kuchar will share with you. Never let anyone define who they want you to be. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
You know who you are. Can you imagine someone telling you what you can do, what you can't do, where you can go, where you cannot go? And remember, a little person, they can't do that. It's very hard. But it wasn't until I stepped out of the classroom into a very challenging situation to be an executive, something that was very new to me. So telling you who you and as I said, having people tell you who you can be is quite difficult. And even telling you that you're worthless. People will shout, scream, holler, or spread nasty rumors about you, thinking that will make you hear their restrictions on you. Think about that. It gets out of
Mhm.
control. And they may think that will restrict you. If you do not hear, they will even try to create roadblocks, thinking that will stop you from, your dreams and desires. But I encourage you, get inspired. Jot down your thoughts on who you are. Create your own taglines and keep that close to your heart when moments get tough. It's those moments that can show you who you are. And my tagline, I can't tell you how much it helped me get through some of the toughest years. And it helped me discover not only that I was cut out for business, but to be a woman in business. You need to block out the negative noise and have the guts, the grit to move forward. And I always wonder if my husband could be here today. I wonder how long it would take him to recognize me because I definitely different. But and you know, I don't know if he would have ever thought of me being his footsteps. But once he does recognize me, I'm sure he would be smothering me with hugs and kisses for my standing up and not folding when the challenges seem so huge. Utilizing patience and tolerance is what I leaned into. It was those two virtues that instilled another tagline: never question if you can. Only question. Why would you ever think you cannot? Think about that. Never
Whoa.
question if you can. Only question. Why would you ever think you cannot? So today, I leave you with a challenge. Do not stop or hesitate with your learning of the English language. You are all amazing that you have stepped in to the path to learn English. There are so many people here in the United States that cannot speak English or read the English language and struggle. So not only you will learn, you will be the one to bridge language, education to other individual parts. So just think about that. I'm very proud and excited that you are on this path of learning English because your effort, your learning is going to bridge yourself, your inspiration, your expertise to many other people. So thank you, Tanya. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Nancy. Yes, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about the, this experience of the transformation that you mentioned. Um, when you stepped up and said, "Well, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to," um, uh, actually, you had to switch a career. So, how do you think? I think it takes a lot of courage, and it's definitely extremely. I think it's a very inspiring experience. What you mentioned that when it happened, you really thought you couldn't do it. Do you remember how you just woke up one day and you said, "No, I'm just going to go for it." And or was it a long process that you you know internal kind of transformation that happened to you? How did it really work? I'm
Well,
curious.
at the time, it was not changing a career. It was changing a career at the time, but when I look at it years later, when I looked at it, it was not changing a career. It was that huge elephant nowhere near me, but inside of me that that was stopping me from feeling that I could do this. So when it came to this plan B, because I would not sell,
Hmm.
believe me, I looked at it that I was changing a career. Um, that I was going into something that I had no experience with. And I had this very gut wrenching question of terrible anxiety, that it was not for me. But once I took, and I remember having talks in my brain about no, yes, no, yes. And when I said yes, it was very tiny with a lot of apprehension. But
Mhm.
when I think about how wrong I was, and kind of wells up in my eyes to kind of pour out how sad it was that I didn't see what an asset I was to, not only be in business, but be in such a wonderful company like Archie Comics. Where's Archie Comics's fans? Most of them, our fans go from 7 to 107, but most of
Yeah.
our fans are in a school. So what
Mhm.
better person to co-lead the company than a school teacher? And also, going into a family business, I don't recommend it. It comes with an extra heavy a struggle. But what better person with training than is the teacher? Because in the classroom, you're dealing with all types of personalities. And I happen to have been the art teacher. So I didn't just have my pod of 30 children. Some schools have 60 children. I
Wow.
would see 5 classes a day with 30 children. So that's 150 children. And then you see another set of, so you saw hundreds in one week. And not only hundreds of the students, you dealt with their parents. So that's a lot of personalities to have to deal with. And someone
True.
who does not have patience and tolerance, you just lose it. But I had 25 years under my belt, so I must have been doing something right.
Yeah. So it's not that it was. So what you're saying, it was there. You just didn't notice that you had it, and then you discovered that you could become entrepreneur. You had this experience already. Being a teacher is it's not just knowing the material, it's communication, and as you mentioned before, seeing people, seeing so many different um, families, knowing how to deal with different issues in the class. So yeah, it's just,
Yes,
yeah.
and as I said, a teacher, they want to advance students, they want them to
Mhm.
grow. Well, the CEO wants to do for the same for its company. I love making money for my company, and I encourage everyone today to go to the Archie Comic website
Go for Yoshi Comics.
and
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the comics itself, and I wanted to ask you both. Maybe also Dean will can join and tell us a little bit about how uh, if you had to give a little tip to the teachers watching us, if there are some teachers watching us, how they can introduce, what would be like, what is the greatest benefit of using comics in learning, like learning a foreign language? How does it really help learners or
well,
struggling learners?
not even struggling learners, just engaging everyone in what you are going to present that day. And the
Mhm.
way to present information is first to relax the mind and want
Relax, right?
the mind to be anxious to be there and take in what you're going to present. So, how many students, honestly, are there to do calculus and science and history? And so I say open every lesson with a comic book. And if someone is very familiar with Archie Comics, it's not hard to find one of our comic book stories that can even relate to calculus, history, geography, science, environment. Right now,
Adventure, travel.
yes. And so once, you say, hey, class, we're going to begin the lesson with a 4-page comic book story. And then after the comic book story, the teacher can ask a question and then say, oh, and let's, go on to this and we'll go back to that. So here you have the excitement and the engagement there.
Yeah, thank you. I think Dean was about to say something also. Dean, were you? Yeah.
Well, I just think Nancy always. I hear her talking a lot about it. It's a good way to bridge subjects to get them talking. You can. Nancy talks a lot about anti-bullying, and she'll use a comic to get the kids talking. Or, for example.
And I created a new character, Scarlet Salty, who's on the spectrum. You cannot find her in our print books, but your audience can get in touch with me. I offer them through a PDF that I have, and they go to, I think, PayPal, and they pay $1.99. But eventually the Scarlet project will be in our books, but not in the near future. But the reason I have it this way is because we're very serious about how to get information on the autistic population, how to support the autistic population with letting people know that autism is just one part of who they are, and some of their behaviors is just part about being autistic, but there's so much more about that population and how they also need time and patience in communication, because their communication skills may not flow easily. And I wanted to go back to, how I'm a businesswoman and I like to advance and grow my company. I said, go to our Archie website, but since we're speaking globally, there's many digital platforms out there, and there's one called Comixology where people can go on from any place in the world and click on our comic book. Right, Mr. Kuchar?
I was about to say that I'm going to link down below under this video in the comments. In the description of this video, I'm going to link few resources where you can find comic books. So everyone interested, it's for everyone. I mean, not only for teachers. If you're just learning English, it's a great way to, just as Nancy said, to relax and just enjoy it without judgment, just having fun with the words and trying to figure. If you didn't understand something, you can always figure it out from the pictures, and that's what I love about it. Don't have to be stressed about understanding each and every word. But as I noticed along, in the process of learning, I use comic books sometimes on my lessons. And by the way, I've used Archie. All my students have a copy of Archie Comics. Now they all have it. So I just wanted to say that that what I noticed is that in the beginning they feel a little bit stunned. Oh, what's that word? Oh, what's jalopy? We don't understand that. And then they just start to laugh, and enjoy it. And that's the reaction. So yeah,
visual support is what helps decode the word. And
yeah.
And as I have in the past before COVID visited many countries, our books are in their bookstores, and there's always comic book stores. They're such fun places. So not only bookstores carry our books globally, but the comic book stores. And it's also good for teachers to use for management, behavior control in the classroom, because you could say, Dean, that was really cool. You were very polite. I give you 10 minutes in the comic den, and they go and chill out and be surrounded by comic books. Many teachers have created mini comic book libraries, and it's usually the Archie Comics that expand.
That's what Dean has right there. I can spot it on the background. Yeah. A little library.
This is one that just came out this month. It's for Valentine's Day. We do a lot of special issues.
Oh, that's so nice. Whoa. By the way, it's another thing, Valentine's Day, and another chance, to talk to the class about, feelings and romance. Why not?
And there's a great character, Hot Dog, who is Jughead's devoted pet, and it's a great way to bring up kindness to animals. I do many talks around the world, and even the young, we call grade 1, first grade, 7-year-old beginner readers may have a hard time reading Archie comics so they can flip the pages, but I do go into that age group and I bring up my presentation pointing out Hot Dog and how Jughead takes care of him and relies on him and how much fun. So you can talk about kindness and responsibility for our pets.
Yeah, and so many other things. Thank you very much, Nancy. I think you've definitely convinced a couple of teachers to do that. I personally love teaching with using comics, and I also encourage my students to create comics. And we not only we read it, we also create it, and I think it's another way to kind of to encourage writing, not only reading but also writing. Thank you very much, Dean, for being here, for your
And I
tech
just want to
support
say,
and everything.
Tanya.
and I just want to say my tip in creating comics is always be consistent. And we can do another talk on intellectual property. And Dean knows a lot about that. And being consistent when creating characters. That's a very element.
Well, that's a very interesting. We should definitely discuss that. Okay, it's just time to say goodbye. Thank you very much, and yeah, let's. I hope we'll be inspired to learn and read. Thank
Okay.
you.
And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, Mr. Kuchar can put up my Instagram handle, and you can follow me on Instagram or contact me.
Yes, it's also going to be in the video description.
Perfect.
Right here. Okay. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dean.